Ilara lived in a small, broken house on the edge of a village that had seen too much war. The stone walls were cracked, and the roof leaked when it rained, but it was hers. She didn't have much, a worn blanket, a few chipped bowls, and the clothes on her back. Food was scarce, and each day was a struggle to find enough to eat. The nearby fields, once full of crops, were now barren and scarred. Most of the villagers had fled, seeking safety elsewhere, but Ilara stayed. She had nowhere else to go. She spent her days foraging for berries and roots in the woods, careful to avoid the soldiers who still roamed the area. They were rough men, and Ilara knew to keep out of their way. Sometimes, she would find scraps of metal or wood that she could trade for a bit of bread at the market, but even that was becoming harder as the war dragged on. Loneliness was her constant companion. She missed the laughter of children playing in the streets, the bustle of the market, and the comforting presence of her family, all gone now, lost to the war. But Ilara was strong. She had learned to survive, to find hope in the smallest of things, a patch of wildflowers blooming in a field, the warmth of the sun on her face, the sound of birds singing in the trees. These small joys kept her going, gave her the strength to face another day in her lonely, penniless existence. One gray morning, as Ilara walked along a rarely used path searching for mushrooms, she heard a faint groan. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Soldiers often used this path, and the sound could mean danger. She crouched low behind a thick bush, peering through the leaves. At first, she saw nothing. Then, her eyes caught movement in the tall grass. It was a man, lying still on the ground. He was wearing a soldier's uniform, but it was torn and stained with blood. Ilara hesitated. She knew she should stay away, that helping a soldier could bring trouble. But something about the way he lay there, so helpless and alone, tugged at her heart. She crept closer, her senses alert. The soldier was young, no older than herself, with dark hair matted to his forehead. He was breathing shallowly, his face pale. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. Ilara knelt beside him, her hand hovering over his shoulder. She gently shook him. "Hey," she whispered. "Are you all right?" The soldier groaned again and his eyes fluttered open. He looked at Ilara, confused and disoriented. Who are you?" he mumbled, his voice weak. Ilara hesitated again, then said, "My name is Ilara. I found you here." She knew she was taking a risk, but she couldn't just leave him there to die. Ilara knew harboring a soldier, especially a wounded one, was incredibly dangerous. If the wrong people found out, she could be accused of treason and punished severely. But the soldier, who she now knew was named Liam based on the faint markings on his dog tag, needed help. He was clearly in no condition to move on his own. Her mind raced, weighing the risks. She barely had enough food for herself, let alone someone else. And where would she hide him? Her small house offered little protection. But looking at Liam's pale face, she couldn't bring herself to abandon him. She made a decision. "Can you walk?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Liam groaned and tried to sit up, but winced in pain. I don't think so," he said, his voice strained. "My leg." Ilara examined his leg. It was badly twisted and swollen. It needed immediate attention. She knew she had to get him back to her house, but how? He was too heavy for her to carry. "All right," she said, trying to sound confident. "I'll help you. We'll take it slow." She helped Liam sit up, supporting him as he leaned against a nearby tree. "Can you put any weight on your leg at all?" He tried, but cried out in pain. "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's no use." Ilara bit her lip, thinking. She had to figure out a way to get him back to her house before anyone found them. Time was running out. The risk was huge, but she was determined to help him, consequences be damned. Thinking quickly, Ilara gathered sturdy branches and used strips torn from her worn skirt to create a makeshift crutch for Liam. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. She helped him to his feet, and he leaned heavily on the crutch, his face contorted in pain. "Ready?" she asked, her voice laced with a forced optimism that she didn't quite feel. Liam nodded, gritting his teeth. "As I'll ever be." Slowly, painstakingly, they began to move. Elara supported Liam's weight, guiding him along the path. Every step was an agony for him, and progress was slow. They stopped frequently to rest, Liam catching his breath and Elara scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. The sun beat down on them, making the journey even more difficult. Elara's meager water supply dwindled with each passing moment. She knew they had to reach her house soon, or they wouldn't make it. As they rounded a bend in the path, Elara spotted something that made her heart sink. In the distance, she saw a group of soldiers approaching. They were heading in their direction. "Liam," she whispered urgently, "soldiers. We have to hide." Panic flared in Liam's eyes. He tried to move faster, but his injured leg wouldn't cooperate. Elara knew they couldn't outrun them. They had to find a hiding place, and fast. Spotting a dense thicket of bushes nearby, Elara pulled Liam towards it. "In here," she urged. "Quickly." They scrambled into the thicket, the branches scratching at their skin. Elara pushed Liam down, covering him with leaves and branches. She then crouched beside him, holding her breath and praying that the soldiers wouldn't find them. The soldiers were getting closer. Elara's heart pounded in her chest. Their lives depended on staying hidden. The soldiers eventually passed, their heavy boots and gruff voices fading into the distance. Elara and Liam remained hidden for a long time, ensuring they were truly gone. Finally, when the silence felt absolute, Elara cautiously peeked out. The coast was clear. With renewed determination, they continued their slow journey to Elara's house. By the time they arrived, dusk was settling in, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Liam was exhausted and in obvious pain. Elara helped him inside, carefully easing him onto her cot. Examining his leg by the dim light of a flickering candle, Elara knew she had to do something. She had no medical supplies, only her knowledge of herbs and folk remedies passed down from her grandmother. She cleaned the wound with water and carefully splinted his leg using pieces of wood and strips of cloth. She brewed a tea from willow bark, hoping to ease his pain. Food was scarce, but Elara shared her meager portion of bread and a handful of berries with Liam. He ate gratefully, his eyes filled with appreciation. Over the next few days, Elara devoted herself to caring for Liam. She changed his bandages, made him tea, and kept him company. She risked going out to forage for more food and herbs, always mindful of the danger. Her own health suffered from the lack of food and sleep, but she refused to give up. She was determined to nurse Liam back to health, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had. She knew it was a risk, but seeing the hope flicker back into Liam's eyes made it all worthwhile. She was helping him, and somehow, in doing so, she was helping herself too. As Liam recovered, he and Elara spent hours talking. At first, the conversations were stilted and hesitant, but as Liam grew stronger, their words flowed more freely. He told her about his life before the war, his family, his friends, his dreams of becoming a carpenter. He spoke of the beauty of his homeland, a place far from the war-torn village where Elara lived. Elara, in turn, shared her own story. She spoke of her family, now gone, and the joys and hardships of growing up in the village. She described her love for the land, her knowledge of the plants and animals that lived there, and her unwavering hope for a better future. Through their stories, they began to understand each other, to see beyond the soldier and the villager, to the people beneath. They found common ground in their shared experiences of loss and hardship, and in their mutual desire for peace and a better life. Liam was struck by Elara's strength and resilience. Despite all she had been through, she remained kind and compassionate. He admired her unwavering spirit and her willingness to help him, a stranger, at such great personal risk. Elara, in turn, was drawn to Liam's gentle nature and his genuine appreciation for her care. She found comfort in his presence, a sense of safety she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that she was no longer alone. As the days passed, their bond deepened. They laughed together, they cried together, and they found solace in each other's company. A trust grew between them, a silent understanding that transcended words. It was a connection forged in hardship, a fragile flame of hope kindled in the darkness of war. A spark of something more was starting to grow between them. The day finally arrived when Liam could walk without the crutch, his legs still weak but steadily improving. He could feel the pull of the outside world, the urge to return to his unit and rejoin the fight. But he hesitated. He looked at Alara, her face etched with worry lines from the lack of food and sleep, her clothes threadbare but her eyes still shining with kindness. He knew he owed her everything. She had saved his life, nursed him back to health, and shared her meager resources with him without a second thought. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, a debt he knew he could never fully repay. I don't know how to thank you, Alara, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You saved my life. Alara shrugged, a faint smile playing on her lips. You would have done the same for me, she said softly. Liam shook his head. I don't know, he admitted. I've seen a lot of terrible things during this war. I'm not sure I would have had the strength to do what you did. He paused, searching for the right words. I have to leave soon, he continued. I need to get back to my unit. Alara's smile faded, replaced by a look of sadness. I know, she said quietly. Liam saw the disappointment in her eyes, and his heart ached. He didn't want to leave her, but he knew he couldn't stay. He had a duty to his country, to his fellow soldiers. But the thought of leaving Alara alone in this war-torn village filled him with guilt and unease. He felt trapped between his duty and his heart. He was ready to leave, but the guilt held him back. He felt indebted to Alara and didn't want to abandon her. Liam wrestled with his conscience for days. He knew he couldn't simply leave Alara to face the dangers of the war alone. He also knew he couldn't abandon his duty. Finally, he came to a decision, a risky one, but the only one that felt right. He found Alara sitting outside her house, mending a tear in her dress. He sat down beside her, taking her hand in his. Alara, he began, his voice serious, I've been thinking a lot about what to do. I can't just leave you here. It wouldn't be right. Alara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. I know you have to go back to your unit, she said softly. Yes, I do, Liam replied. But I don't want to leave you behind. So, I have an idea, a crazy one, maybe. But I want you to consider it. He took a deep breath. Come with me, Alara. Come with me when I go. Leave this village behind. There's nothing left for you here. Come with me, and I promise I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. We can start a new life together, somewhere safe, somewhere peaceful. Alara stared at him, her eyes wide with surprise. She hadn't expected that. The idea of leaving her home, the only place she had ever known, was both terrifying and exhilarating. But the thought of starting a new life with Liam, a life filled with hope and love, was too tempting to resist. It was a chance at a better life, a chance she never thought she would have. But where would we go? She asked, her voice trembling. Anywhere you want, Liam replied, squeezing her hand. Anywhere that's safe. We'll find a place together. He looked into her eyes, his own filled with sincerity and love. What do you say, Alara? Will you come with me? Alara looked into Liam's eyes, seeing the sincerity and love reflected there. The decision was a huge one, terrifying even, but the thought of staying in the village alone, with no hope for the future, was even more frightening. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Yes, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Yes, Liam, I'll go with you. A wave of relief washed over Liam's face, followed by a surge of joy. He squeezed her hand tightly, his eyes shining with happiness. "Thank you, Elara," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You won't regret this, I promise." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as they prepared to leave. Elara gathered her few belongings, her mother's shawl, a small wooden carving her father had made, and a handful of seeds she had saved for planting. She packed them carefully into a small bag, leaving behind everything else. Saying goodbye to the village was harder than she expected. She walked through the familiar streets one last time, remembering the laughter and joy that had once filled them. She visited her family's graves, whispering a silent farewell. A tear rolled down her cheek as she turned her back on the only home she had ever known. As they walked away from the village, hand in hand, Elara felt a mix of sadness and excitement. She was leaving behind her old life, her past, but she was also embracing the unknown, a future filled with hope and love. She was scared, but she wasn't alone. She had Liam by her side, and that was all that mattered. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. She looked at Liam and smiled. The future was uncertain, but she was ready to face it with him. Their journey to safety was long and arduous, fraught with danger and uncertainty. They traveled on foot, avoiding main roads and sticking to hidden paths and dense forests. Liam's leg was still weak, and they had to take frequent breaks, but Elara encouraged him every step of the way. They faced hunger, thirst, and the constant threat of encountering soldiers or bandits. They scavenged for food, sharing whatever they could find. One night, they were caught in a fierce storm, seeking shelter under a rocky overhang, shivering and huddling together for warmth. Another time, they narrowly escaped being captured by a group of soldiers, hiding in a muddy ditch until they passed. Despite the hardships, their bond grew stronger with each passing day. They relied on each other for support, sharing their fears and hopes. Liam taught Elara how to use a knife for protection, and Elara shared her knowledge of the plants and animals that could provide food and medicine. They learned to trust each other completely, their lives intertwined in a way they never could have imagined. The dangers they faced tested their strength and resilience, but they also revealed the depth of their love and commitment. They were no longer just a soldier and a villager, they were partners, soulmates, bound together by fate and forged in the crucible of war. Every challenge they overcame together only strengthened their resolve and solidified their love for one another. The journey was difficult, but their love made it bearable. As they traveled, Liam began to share more about his life before the war, painting vivid pictures of his home, a bustling town nestled in a green valley. He spoke of his family, his loving parents, his mischievous younger sister, and his wise old grandfather who had taught him the art of carpentry. He described their cozy home, filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and the sound of laughter. He told Elara about his dreams of opening his own carpentry shop, creating beautiful furniture for the people in his town. He showed her a small, worn wooden bird he had carved, a gift from his grandfather, a symbol of hope and freedom. Elara listened intently, captivated by his stories. She imagined his life in that peaceful town, so different from the war-torn village she had known. She saw a new side of Liam, a gentle and kind man with a deep love for his family and his craft. He confessed his fears about his family, unsure if they were safe or even alive. The war had cut off all communication, leaving him in a state of constant worry. Elara comforted him, reminding him to hold on to hope and to believe that they would be reunited someday. Sharing his past with Elara brought him a sense of peace and connection. It allowed her to see him not just as a soldier, but as a complete person, with dreams, fears, and a loving family waiting for him. Learning about Liam's past deepened Elara's love for him, solidifying their bond and giving her a glimpse into the life they could build together, a life filled with love, family, and the simple joys of everyday living. After weeks of relentless travel, they stumbled upon a hidden valley, untouched by the ravages of war. A crystal-clear stream meandered through a meadow dotted with wildflowers. Towering trees provided shade and shelter. It was a sanctuary, a haven of peace and tranquility. They decided to stay for a while, to rest and recuperate. They built a small shelter from branches and leaves, a temporary home where they could feel safe and secure. They spent their days exploring the valley, marveling at its beauty. Liam's leg continued to heal, and Alara's spirit was lifted by the serenity of their surroundings. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. They talked about their dreams for the future, their hopes for a peaceful world where they could build a life together. They reflected on their journey, the challenges they had overcome, and the love that had grown between them. The valley provided them with a much-needed respite from the horrors of war, a chance to heal both physically and emotionally. It was a time for reflection, a time to acknowledge the depth of their feelings for each other. They realized that their love was more than just gratitude or companionship, it was a deep, abiding connection that would sustain them through whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that this moment of peace was precious, a gift that they would cherish forever. It was a time to truly appreciate each other and the love they had found amidst the chaos. The beauty of the valley mirrored the beauty of their growing love. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the silence between them was different. It wasn't the comfortable silence of companionship, but a charged silence, heavy with unspoken feelings. Liam looked at Alara, her face illuminated by the flickering flames, and he knew he couldn't hold back any longer. "Alara," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion, "I need to tell you something." Alara looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what he was going to say, she could feel it in the air. I love you, Alara," Liam confessed, his eyes searching hers. "I never thought I could feel this way, especially not during a time like this. But you've changed everything for me. You saved my life, you showed me kindness when I needed it most, and you've given me hope for the future. I can't imagine my life without you." Tears welled up in Alara's eyes. She had been waiting for these words, longing to hear them, but she was afraid to believe they could be true. "I love you too, Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never thought I would find love again, not after everything I've lost. But you've shown me that it's possible to find happiness even in the darkest of times. You've given me a reason to believe in the future." Liam reached out and took her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. He leaned in and kissed her gently, a kiss filled with love, gratitude, and hope. Alara closed her eyes, savoring the moment, knowing that this was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with love and happiness. Their love, unexpected and powerful, had finally blossomed. Reluctantly, they left the peaceful valley and continued their journey, eventually arriving in a new town, larger and more prosperous than Alara's village. They hoped to find work and build a new life there, a place where they could finally be safe and happy. However, their arrival was met with suspicion and prejudice. The townspeople were wary of outsiders, especially those who came from war-torn areas. Alara's simple clothes and Liam's soldier's uniform marked them as different, as strangers who didn't belong. Rumors began to circulate about them. Some whispered that Alara was a spy, others that Liam was a deserter. People eyed them with suspicion, avoiding them in the streets and refusing to offer them work. They found it difficult to find a place to live, and even harder to earn a living. Alara felt the sting of prejudice, the pain of being judged for something she couldn't control. She missed the simple kindness of her village, the sense of community that had been shattered by the war. Liam, too, felt the weight of the townspeople's suspicion. He had fought for his country, but now he was being treated like an outcast. Their happiness was threatened by the prejudice and suspicion that surrounded them. They knew they had to stand together, to prove to the townspeople that they were good people, deserving of respect and acceptance. They would face these new challenges together, just as they had faced all the others, their love a beacon of hope in the face of adversity. They knew it would be difficult, but they were determined to overcome the prejudice and build a life for themselves in this new town. One day, while Alara was trying to sell some wildflowers she had gathered, a group of men began to harass her, making cruel remarks about her appearance and her origins. They accused her of being a beggar and a thief, their words laced with venom. Elara tried to ignore them, but their taunts grew louder and more aggressive. She felt her cheeks flush with shame and anger. Just as she was about to burst into tears, Liam appeared, his eyes blazing with fury. "Leave her alone," he roared, his voice silencing the men. "She has done nothing to you." The men scoffed, but they backed down slightly, intimidated by Liam's size and his military bearing. "She's just a dirty refugee," one of them sneered. "She doesn't belong here." Liam stepped forward, his fists clenched. "She is worth more than all of you put together," he said, his voice low and menacing. "She is kind, she is strong, and she has a heart of gold. She has suffered more than you can imagine, and she deserves nothing but respect." He turned to Elara, his eyes softening. "Don't listen to them," he said gently. "They don't know you. I know you, and I love you for who you are." He then turned back to the men, his gaze unwavering. "If any of you ever bother her again, you'll have to deal with me," he warned. The men, seeing the determination in his eyes, finally dispersed, muttering insults under their breath. Elara ran to Liam, throwing her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You didn't have to do that." Liam held her close, his heart filled with love and protectiveness. "Yes, I did," he said firmly. "I will always defend you, Elara. Always." His actions that day proved his commitment to Elara, showing the townspeople that he truly loved her and that he would stand by her side, no matter what. It was the first step towards earning their respect and acceptance. Liam's courageous defense of Elara began to change the townspeople's perception of them. Slowly, cautiously, some people started to offer them small acts of kindness. A baker gave them day-old bread, a farmer offered them work in his fields. Liam, using his carpentry skills, began to repair broken furniture and build new items for the townspeople. Elara, with her knowledge of herbs and plants, helped to heal the sick and injured. They proved their worth to the community, demonstrating their kindness, their skills, and their unwavering commitment to each other. Gradually, the prejudice and suspicion began to fade, replaced by acceptance and respect. Liam eventually found a small workshop where he could practice his carpentry, and Elara started a small garden, selling her herbs and flowers at the market. They earned enough to rent a small cottage, a place they could finally call home. The war still raged on in the distance, a constant reminder of the chaos and suffering that existed in the world. But in their small cottage, surrounded by love and security, Liam and Elara found a haven of peace. They had built a new life together, a life filled with happiness and hope, despite the ongoing turmoil of the world. They never forgot the lessons they had learned, the hardships they had overcome, and the love that had brought them together. They cherished every moment, knowing that their happiness was a precious gift, a testament to the power of love and resilience. They looked forward to a future filled with love, laughter, and the simple joys of everyday life, grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought them together. Their love story, born amidst chaos, had blossomed into a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.